Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments. Where tonight we're going to take a look at something that's near and dear to my heart, differentiating math lessons. Personally, I think I do a great job as a teacher, but I think I can always learn more. And I think differentiating my lessons is always something that I'm always trying to find more help with that. And I think tonight Julie's going to help us with that. So I'm excited about this. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus and statistics near Pittsburgh, where I use TI technology to make those tough to teach, tough to learn concepts accessible to all my students. And with us tonight is Julie Frizzell. And Julie is a seasoned educator with 39 years of experience working with middle and high school students and their teachers. She is currently working as a consultant for Region 10 Education Service Center, where she supports secondary mathematics teachers in 130 independent school districts, charters, and private schools across 10 counties in north central Texas. Julie loves discovering new ways to improve her teaching practices and sharing what she learns with fellow educators. Julie, it's great to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, it's great. I'm glad to be here.
Julie, would you mind discussing our agenda for tonight?
Okay, we're going to start with welcome and introductions, and then we'll talk about, we're going to explore some TI activity resources available for the TI-Nspire and the TI-84 devices. We're going to review differentiation strategies and apply them to some activities, and we'll collaborate on additional ways to differentiate for all students.
Awesome. And then our expected outcomes for tonight, Julie?
At the end of this session, I want you to be able to say that I can find activities to use with my students, and I can adapt activities to meet the differentiated needs of my students.
Those are some good outcomes. So tonight, as a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we'll provide a link to the event certificate of attendance, as well as a link for the documents at the end of the webinar tonight. This webinar is being recorded, and you're automatically muted. All right, Julie, let me give you control. All right, feel free to share your screen. Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome. This session is differentiating calculator activities for all learners. And I have taught middle school and high school all kinds of different types of classes, all kinds of different levels of classes. And no matter what class I was teaching, it seems like there was always a huge variety of levels of students in all of those classes. So meeting those diverse needs of all the students in a class can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Using readily available and free resources on the TI website, we'll explore a variety of differentiation strategies that can be used to scaffold and extend the learning for those students. Carol Ann Tomlinson, the guru of differentiation in my mind, reminds us that teaching can't be a one-size-fits-all job. In order to meet the varied needs of all the students in our classes, we have to make sure that we're giving everyone what they need to be successful. And that includes providing scaffolding for students who struggle, and also providing extension opportunities for students who are academically advanced. Well, that sounds like a huge undertaking. This evening, I'm going to show you some ways to make the task more doable. So on this graphic, this just talks about the different ways that we can differentiate in a classroom. We can differentiate content or what students are learning. We can differentiate process or how students learn. We can differentiate product or the way students share their learning. And we can differentiate the learning environment or where and with whom students learn. So I'd like for you in the chat to go ahead and tell me, what are some things that you do to differentiate for your students? Mike, if you can help me keep an eye on the chat.
Absolutely.
What are some things that you do to differentiate for your students?
All right, so far I'm seeing a few chats come in. Let me try and grab them. So I think Robin said we offer extended time testing.
Mm-hmm.
Marco said I try to work with different students to discover what they need. Jim said he tries to provide opportunities for students who struggle to do less homework problems. Kathy said that I think they agreed with the number of problems, adjusting that. I saw think, pair, share, use multiple representations of concepts, scaffold the content, differentiate assessment methods, extra time and retests, rewarding important info and not using truncated words such as info.
Mm-hmm.
I like to relate math with other content areas, varied practice activities based on needs, supports as necessary, ELL, and academic proficiency. I try to give choice in activities and connect cross-curricular. And small group scaffold, think aloud, think, pair, share.
Perfect. Those are great strategies. And I think we can all relate to lots of different strategies that we can use. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is on the TI website, there's a lot of information available to us that I have found in my experience that teachers don't either don't know about or they don't take the time to use. And so the calculator, there are lots of resources available on the website. So one of the activities, or if you go to the activities page on the website, when I look for activities, I go to the search all activities site, which is linked at the top, linked on the screen, and I think Mike's going to put it in the chat. But it's if you'll notice that if you go to this main search page, there are nearly 6,000 classroom activities that are free to us as teachers that we can use and adapt for our students. Now, nearly 6,000 activities would take a lot of time to explore, and time is something that I've never known a teacher to have enough of. So let's narrow our search a little bit. So if I wanted to teach about transformations and I wanted to search for activities that were ready-made for transformations, I can type that in the search box. And when I do that, notice that my search results go down to just over 100 activities. That's still a lot of activities, but I can further narrow my search results by choosing either math or science. I could limit it to a particular device or specify a particular grade range to look for activities for. By limiting my search to the TI-84 and the TI-84 calculators, I'm now down to just 90 activities. So I am curious, how many of you out there have used the activities that are available on TI's website? And if you have used them, do you have a particular favorite? So in the chat, if you have a favorite, I'd like to hear about it. And if you've used the results, if you've used the activities, I would like to hear that too. All right, so Jim says he's used them many times. He likes the math-inspired families of functions. And Kathleen says she's familiar with the activities but haven't used them in a few years, which I think that happens a lot. We know there's a resource out there and we sometimes forget about it. Exploring domain and range, that's great. The math inspired ones. Graphing trigonometric functions. And the zombie unit is the favorite. Awesome. So I have chosen a couple of activities that I'd like to work with, dealing with transformations. And I've chose two similar activities. One uses TI-84 calculators and the other uses Nspire calculators. I'd like to give you a few minutes to familiarize yourself with one of those activities. You can choose either activity. I'm going to direct you to both of them, and then you can choose whichever one you'd like to go to. So if you're more familiar with an Nspire calculator, the first activity I want to look at is transformation of functions 1. So if Mike just put the link in the chat to this activity. So if you work with a TI-Nspire calculator, go to that link. If you're more comfortable with the TI-84 calculator, go to the Move It bit.ly that's on the screen. This is an activity using the TI-84. So pick one of those activities, either the one for Nspire or the one for the TI-84. And I want to give you just a few minutes to explore what's on the website. And while you're there, I do want to point out a few features that are available. This is the Move It activity. You'll notice on the left-hand side of the screen, there is an activity overview, and then there are some key steps in the activity. Along the right-hand side of the page, you can download all of the files in a zip file all at once. You can open up the PDF of the teacher notes. You can open up the student files. Notice that with the student files, there's a doc version and a PDF version. You can also, at a glance, check to see the alignment with standards or textbooks. You can also see quickly what grade level the activity is designed for and about how much time it will take. If you're looking at the activity for Nspire, many of the Nspire activities include a TNS file. That's the file that goes to the Nspire calculator, and it will give you the activity that you can download into the student calculators. So I'm gonna be quiet for just a few minutes and give you opportunity to explore one of those two activities. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat or ask questions or put comments or questions in the chat, and we will try and answer any of those questions. So I'm happy to share the links. I love some of these activities, and I always like to share the activities that I find most helpful for me. So you are so welcome. I'm going to give you about a minute longer to explore, just to get a feel for those activities, for one of those activities. Okay, so let's say I have decided to use this transformation of functions activity, and I want to adapt it for my students who maybe are struggling students. So I would go to the student activity document. I'm going to open that up. And I'm hoping that you can see that document. So if I click on enable editing, then I have a Word document. And if you're not super familiar with editing a Word document, there are a couple of tips that I'd like to offer you just in editing on a Word document. Is first of all, a lot of the activities that are available on the activities page, they're formatted using tables. And so one of the things that I do, when I'm making adjustments to it, when I'm editing the document, it's helpful for me to be able to see where the table is. And so if I click on the little square in the corner of this table box, then I can change the borders so that I show all of the borders. And that for me is helpful when I'm editing, because then I know how much room I have to work with when I'm editing it. And then the other trick is sometimes there are lots of formatting things that are hidden normally. So if I go to File and I go down to the bottom and choose Options, and on the Word options under Display, if I click on this box that just says Show All Formatting Marks, and I click on OK, then it's going to show me every time there's a paragraph, every time there's a tab, every time there's all those kinds of things. And so that is helpful for me when I am formatting things, when I'm making changes and editing a document that comes that way. When I'm finished and ready to publish, then I can hide the borders of the table, and I can go back to the file and then options under display again, uncheck show all formatting marks, and then they go away. So that's just a little bit, it's taken me a little bit of time to figure out how to do all of that. And so I have that stuff. Those are little tips that I thought I would share with you. All right, so I've decided that I want this activity to use with my students, and some of my students may need a little extra support. So I'm going to show you what I have done to adjust. So on this slide, I have screenshots of a document that I created using the information from the teacher pages and the Word document that came with the activity. So when I click on this link, it actually takes me to the document. And when I'm looking at the document, I want to show you, I'm going to point out some things that I've added to that Word document that we just looked at to hopefully help my students. And this is what I call my scaffolded version. This is the one that I would give to students who need a little extra support. So if you look at the top of the document, you'll see in this very top part, I included a help box. In that help box, I tell students where they can find some tutorials on TI's website that will help them to load to open a document on the Nspire calculator and help them navigate through. So even students who don't need extra differentiation may benefit from that. And I didn't have to create that from scratch. I found that by looking at the teacher pages. So if you scroll down the page, over here on the right-hand side, I included some tech tips. Those also came directly from the teacher pages. And I included them on there so that students who sometimes are reluctant to ask for help with how to use the calculator. They don't really know, they may have had experience before, but they may not remember. And so I included those. I also included some sentence stems and some sentence frames to help students to figure out what it is that they need to write and kind of nudge them in the direction that I'm looking for their what I want them to discover in this activity. So then if you continue on down to the bottom of that first page, you'll notice I included a stop sign here at the bottom because periodically I want students to check in with me, the teacher, to make sure that they're on the right page. I don't want them to go too far into an activity without making sure that they are doing things correctly and making sure that they're understanding what it is. So I just included checkpoints for students as they go. As I continue on through the activity, there's another checkpoint. And then midway through that second page, there's some vocabulary that I wanted to point out to students. I wanted to highlight that. Again, that vocabulary came from the teacher pages. So I added it into the student document so that they would have that extra reinforcement there. And then again, I keep going with a tech tip as it comes up in the activity. I give them a place for them to put their answers as they work. And then at the end of the document, I give them a place for them to summarize what they've learned in this activity, because I feel like it's important for students to be able to reflect on what they were learning and make sure that they are getting, that they're kind of able to synthesize everything from that activity at the end. So that is my version that is scaffolded. And so what I'd like to know is, what do you think about those scaffolds that I included in that activity? And do you think that students would benefit from that? And is there anything that I might have left out? So in the chat, if you'll just tell me, what do you think? Is there anything you would change, anything you would add? Okay, the check-in points and the stop signs, absolutely. I learned that from a former teacher, a fellow teacher, who would do that, and she didn't do it electronically. She would just write them on there. But I think that's important for all students. The sentence frames are a great way to differentiate. That gives students power, not only English language learners, but it gives all of our students that, that place to start. Absolutely. All right, are there any things that you think I should have added? All right, the closure part, very cool. So Samuel said, I found myself that kids will benefit from chunks and not the entire document. That is so true. If we can chunk the information into smaller bits, all students, I think, benefit from that. And Jay says he really likes the conceptual nature of the problems and the visualization. So the conceptual approach, I can't take credit for. That was TI's creation. I just have adapted it for my own purposes, but I totally, I love the exploration activities that are available on the website. Okay, so students who struggle are not the only students that I may need to differentiate for. There are students who I may need to provide a little enrichment opportunities for. So on this slide, you can see, on this slide, you can see the Move It activity that I have adapted for enrichment. I've provided enrichment opportunities. So there's screenshots on that page. If I click on this link, it'll take me to the actual document. Right, so this is again for students. This is for students who pick up things pretty quickly, who don't need a whole lot of practice to be able to understand things and to benefit from an activity like this. I did go ahead and include the box at the beginning that gives students access to some tutorials that may help them if they don't remember how to enter data in lists or set up stat plots, and so they can go and watch those tutorials online. Those are things that are available through TI's website. Then I also had included the tips for the TI-84 calculator to help students remember how to set up the lists and how to create a stat plot. And you'll notice on this page, there's a whole lot less words. There's a whole lot less direction here, but I still included a check-in at the end of that first page. I want to make sure that they have their calculator set up before they move on to something else. So as you go through this activity, this one uses the TI-84, like I said, and as students work through different examples, I give them a place to generalize what's happening as they make those transformations. So 3 and 6 are they generalize what happened on those pages. Again, there's a check-in place. In part 2, they're changing in other directions. And so again, I give them a place to generalize their information. And then finally on this one, for these students, they may not need as much practice to be able to figure out how to do an activity or how to do a transformation on the calculator. And so I don't want to give these students more work. I don't want to give them busy work, but I want to give them some different work. So in this activity, because it was an extension, I did want to give students who finished early an opportunity to move on to some other explorations. And so I included some choice in this part of the activity or this part of the handout for these students because I wanted them to be able to either create their own picture or look at the symbols or do their own research to help them differentiate this activity. So again, that's the activity. That's an example of an extension activity using the TI-84 calculator activity. And so I would love, so I would like, again, in the chat for this particular activity, did I hit the mark? Is there something you would change? Is there something you would add or take away? Just in the chat. So the idea of extra credit I haven't really thought about that. But you could give extra credit, but I think for these students, in a lot of times, my accelerated students didn't need to do the traditional practice that my other students needed. And so I could use that as an alternative, just a different assignment as opposed to the assignment that maybe the rest of the class was doing. Okay, so I see someone asked about showing how to insert the check-in stop signs. So let's see if I can do this. So if I go back to an activity that I was editing, so I would just, that stop sign was just a graphic that I found online. And I would just go to, in the Word document, I would just insert an image, a picture. You can save it online, or you can go online and find a picture that you want to insert and put it in there. All right, so Mike, did you see any other questions that I could answer?
I think Rudy had just asked you just to kind of double check about what do you do with your students at the stop signs?
All I would do is make sure that students were on the right, were understanding what was being asked of them up to that point. And then a lot of times I would just initial that I had checked it, and then they would move on to the next part. Awesome. All right, any other questions? Any more things that you would change or add, or anything that you especially like? So I see, again, the combining of multiple transformations up to 4 with a triangle and is an inspiring enrichment activity. So again, you could have all kinds of different extensions that you could add. Absolutely. Right. And Samuel says, I use the background water fountain when graphing quadratics. I then ask the model the best function. Perfect. These are great activities. Okay, so just to kind of review, I want to talk about some of the strategies that I was purposeful in including in those differentiated versions of the activities available on the website. So here are some things that I tried to do with those activities. First of all, the content was differentiated because I provide tiered assignments. I provided 3 different levels, including the original, that covers the same big ideas, but to different levels, to different depths and complexities. In the scaffolded version, I highlighted academic vocabulary so that students could see how those terms are used correctly. Students could work on this individually or in small groups, which is a way to differentiate the process or the learning environment. Students were provided access to resources that could help, including the tutorial links and the tech tips. I included frequent checks for understanding so that I could make sure students weren't going down the wrong paths as they were learning. And for students who might work faster than others, I provided choice in extension opportunities so that they could have a little more control over what was happening. So these are fairly easy adjustments to make, and they can have a huge impact on how students respond to a learning activity that we do. So I see Deborah asked, will the differentiated Word documents be made available after the webinar? So that brings me directly to this last part. So whenever I do a workshop, either virtually or in person, I like to share my resources with participants because I think we're all better learning together. So the link on the screen will take you to a Google folder in which I've included a PDF of the presentation along with the files for both of the activities that we looked at tonight. So if you go to that link, and Mike added it to the website. So in the folder, there's the PDF at the bottom, and then there's a folder for the Move It activity and the Transformation of Functions 1. So if you click on either one of those folders, within that folder are all the files from the website, all the student, the Word document, the PDF version of the student pages, the teacher pages, and the TNS file for an Nspire calculator. Then I also included my versions of my extended version and a scaffolded version for each of those activities. So I included those as PDFs, partly because remember that you're welcome to use them as they are, but remember that what my students need may not be what your students need. And so what works best for my students might not work best for your students. And so you are welcome to take that Word document and make those changes yourself. So that's what's included there. And so that brings me to the last of my slides. On this slide, on this screen is my email and my Twitter handle. I would love to hear from any of you if you give these ideas a try, if they work, if you have questions, please feel free to email me or reach out to me over social media, and I will be happy to get back to you. Are there any questions? Any questions that came up in the chat or any questions that you have now? So I see a question. Do you provide the 3 documents at the same time to the students and let them choose? For me personally, I would not let them choose. I would typically have them give them to specific students. It may be a situation where a student may start on one and need to move up or move down, and I could do that. I try to make the activities look somewhat similar to each other, at least on the first page, so it's not very super obvious that somebody is getting one version versus another, but they're all pretty close to the same. Great, I like the idea of a check-in, and I think I'll use it even in lessons which aren't based on the calculator. Perfect, absolutely. All right, so I love that somebody said today's takeaway is to plan my activities with differentiated teaching strategies. So that is my whole purpose, and I will, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Mike.
Thanks, Julie.
Make him a center. Okay.
So you all today have been awesome in the chat window with your thoughts and comments. So please keep that conversation going. We'd love to hear from you, what you're excited about and what you're trying and what's working and what you're still struggling with on any of those major social media outlets. Again, as we wrap things up, if you have any last-minute questions for Julie, please try to get those asked. I know she'll do her best to get those answered. To receive a certificate of attendance, go ahead and click the link in the chat window. Also listed as a link for the documents for tonight. And in case those links aren't working or the chat window isn't working for you right now, don't worry, you'll automatically get a follow-up email in a couple days. And that follow-up email will contain links to the certificate, the documents, and the recording so you can watch this again at your own pace. And if you are watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. After the webinar tonight, if you're in need of any post-webinar follow-up, feel free to give us a call at 1-800-TI-CARES or drop us an email, ti-cares@ti.com. We'd always love to hear from you. When you leave the webinar tonight, a brief survey will automatically appear in your browser. That survey helps us plan future online events, and we really hope to share your thoughts in that post-webinar survey. Huge thank you to Julie for all the time you put into all the documents that you share with us tonight. Thank you so much for the documents and just for your expertise and your thoughts and how to adapt other documents. So Julie, thanks so much.
You're welcome. I am glad to help.
And thanks so much to everyone for joining us tonight. We hope to see you back online next week. Have a great night.